My friends, we live in a world teeming with whispers. Some are the soft, encouraging murmurs of truth, but others are the insidious suggestions of falsehood, creeping into our minds and hearts without our noticing. These subtle intrusions often present themselves as harmless, even appealing. Yet, like weeds in a garden, they take root and threaten to choke the beauty and vitality of our lives. Do we not all have within us a tendency to excuse their presence? We tell ourselves it is small, it will do no harm, but consider this: no towering oak began as anything but an acorn. Likewise, the grandest ruin of a soul or society begins with the smallest compromise. The question is not whether these influences exist, but whether we will summon the courage to remove them while we still can. We are stewards, not only of our own lives, but also of the communities we inhabit. To tolerate the presence of corruption, be it in thought, word, or deed, is to abdicate this sacred duty. It is not enough to say we wish for good, we must actively work to uphold it. To delay action, to let that which harms persist just a little longer, is to invite disaster with open arms. You may ask, what harm is there in waiting? Let us examine the folly of such a question. A small fire left untended becomes a blaze. A crack in the foundation ignored leads to collapse. So it is with the influences we allow to linger in our lives. Their power lies not in their size, but in our apathy toward them. I say remove them right now. Do not wait for a more convenient time, for that time will never come. Do not convince yourself that they will disappear on their own, for they never will. The act of removal is not easy. It demands clarity of purpose and the willingness to bear discomfort. Yet what great endeavor does not? When you act, you do more than rid yourself of what harms. You make space for what is good, what is noble, what is true. You signal to yourself and to others that you value these things enough to defend them. And in that defense, you strengthen not only your own life, but the very fabric of the world around you. The subtlety of influence is one of the most underestimated forces shaping human character and society. At first glance, the small details of life, the fleeting thoughts, the casual habits, and the seemingly inconsequential decisions appear insignificant. Yet it is precisely their subtle nature that gives them such power. Much like the gentle drip of water that wears away stone over time, these influences work quietly but relentlessly, often unnoticed until their impact is fully realized. To understand their true weight, we must delve into how these small, unassuming elements mold our thoughts, behaviors, and ultimately our destinies. Consider, for instance, the idea of repetition. When we are exposed repeatedly to a particular idea, whether through media, conversation, or our own inner dialogue, it begins to shape our perception of reality. The notion does not announce itself with a trumpet blast, but seeps in like a fog, gradually clouding our judgment. An action that initially seemed questionable might, through familiarity, become normalized. A belief once dismissed as irrelevant or wrong might start to feel plausible, even appealing. This is the power of incremental influence, not to forcefully convince but to nudge, to wear down resistance, and to reshape our inner landscapes imperceptibly. Habits are another key vehicle of subtle influence. Human beings are creatures of habit, and the small rituals we perform daily have a cumulative effect on who we become. A single act, repeated enough times, forms a groove in the mind, a path of least resistance that we begin to follow automatically. A seemingly harmless habit, like indulging in a small distraction, might not appear problematic at first. But when repeated consistently, it can cultivate a mindset of avoidance or laziness, undermining our capacity for focus and discipline. Conversely, even the smallest positive habits, like taking a moment each day to reflect or express gratitude, can profoundly uplift and refine our character over time. Subtle influences often derive their power from their ability to bypass our conscious defenses. The mind is vigilant against direct assaults on its values and beliefs, but is far less prepared for the quiet erosion that occurs when harmful ideas or behaviors are packaged attractively. Advertisements, for example, do not simply sell products, they sell values and lifestyles. They appeal to our desires, promising happiness, success, or belonging, and in doing so, subtly encourage us to adopt certain attitudes or priorities. A single advertisement may seem trivial, but the cumulative effect of countless messages over months or years can shape cultural norms and individual aspirations in profound ways. Social interactions also play a pivotal role in the subtle shaping of our lives. The people we surround ourselves with, friends, family, colleagues, exert a quiet but persistent influence on our attitudes and actions. Conversations, even those that seem casual or light-hearted, carry seeds of thought that may take root in our minds. A friend's cynicism might lead us to view the world more skeptically. A mentor's optimism could inspire us to see challenges as opportunities. The impact of these interactions is often so gradual that we fail to notice the shift until it has already taken place. Perhaps most concerning is the way subtle influences shape our moral compass. It is rare for a person to abandon their principles suddenly. More often, moral erosion occurs through a series of small compromises. A white lie told to avoid discomfort, a rule bent for convenience. Each decision feels minor in isolation. Yet, over time, these choices accumulate, gradually dulling our sensitivity to what is right and wrong. By the time the full extent of the shift becomes apparent, we may find ourselves far removed from the values we once held dear. The subtlety of influence is also amplified in an age of constant connectivity. Social media algorithms, for example, are designed to show us what we are likely to engage with, creating echo chambers that reinforce our existing beliefs. The curated content we consume shapes our worldview, often without our conscious awareness. This process does not occur through overt coercion, but through the steady reinforcement of certain ideas, while marginalizing others. As a result, our perceptions become narrower and our capacity for critical thinking diminishes. Even physical environments have their part to play. The spaces we inhabit, our homes, workplaces, communities, subtly influence our state of mind and behavior. A cluttered environment might foster a sense of chaos or distraction, while a well-organized space could encourage productivity and peace. These effects are so subtle that we rarely stop to consider them, yet they exert a powerful pull on our daily lives. In examining these various forms of influence, it becomes clear that their power lies not in their intensity, but in their persistence and subtlety. They infiltrate unnoticed, shaping our lives from the inside out. Recognizing this truth is the first step toward regaining control over the forces that shape us. For only by becoming aware of these subtle currents can we begin to direct them, ensuring that the influences we allow into our lives lead us toward growth, integrity, and fulfillment. Moral responsibility is not a passive state of being, but an active and dynamic force that demands engagement, discernment, and courage. It requires individuals to make deliberate choices in the face of ethical challenges, recognizing that inaction is itself a choice with consequences. The essence of moral responsibility lies in acknowledging our role as stewards of our lives and the world around us. It is a calling to protect what is good, confront what is harmful, and ensure that our actions or lack thereof align with principles that sustain human dignity and virtue. At its core, moral responsibility begins with self-awareness. It demands that we take an unflinching look at our own lives, examining the influences we allow to shape us, and the choices we make in response to them. This is no easy task, as self-awareness often brings discomfort. It requires us to confront our flaws, biases, and areas of complacency. Yet without this foundation, any effort to act responsibly is built on shaky ground. We cannot hope to address the external wrongs of the world if we are unwilling to address the internal inconsistencies within ourselves. A key aspect of moral responsibility is the willingness to make difficult decisions, even when they are inconvenient or uncomfortable. Too often people delay action under the guise of caution or pragmatism, waiting for a better time to address pressing issues. However, moral challenges rarely resolve themselves. A harmful behavior, an unjust system, or a toxic influence does not simply disappear through neglect. Responsibility calls us to act decisively, even when doing so requires sacrifice. Whether it means speaking out against injustice, ending a harmful relationship, or confronting a personal weakness, the path of moral responsibility is rarely the easiest but always the most necessary. The scope of moral responsibility extends beyond the individual, encompassing the impact of our actions on others and on society as a whole. Every choice we make ripples outward, influencing the people and systems around us. For instance, a leader who prioritizes profit over ethics sends a message that values can be compromised for convenience. Conversely, someone who upholds integrity in a challenging situation inspires others to do the same. In this way, moral responsibility is not a solitary endeavor but a communal one, where our actions contribute to a larger tapestry of values and consequences. One of the most challenging aspects of moral responsibility is recognizing and resisting the temptation of indifference. It is often easier to look away from problems that do not directly affect us, to tell ourselves that they are someone else's concern. However, moral responsibility insists that we take ownership of our role in the broader human experience. If we witness harm or injustice and choose to remain silent, we become complicit in its perpetuation. Responsibility requires us to act not only in our own interest, but in the interest of others, especially those who lack the power or resources to advocate for themselves. Courage is an indispensable companion to moral responsibility. It takes courage to stand against the tide, to reject popular opinion or entrenched norms when they conflict with what is right. Courage is not the absence of fear, but the resolve to act despite it. History is replete with examples of individuals who demonstrated this courage, from whistleblowers exposing corruption to ordinary citizens resisting oppression. These acts of bravery remind us that moral responsibility often demands a willingness to bear personal risk for the sake of a greater good. Education and discernment also play critical roles in fulfilling moral responsibility. To act rightly, we must first understand what is right. This involves cultivating the ability to think critically, weigh evidence, and evaluate the consequences of our actions. In a world filled with conflicting information and competing interests, discernment helps us navigate the complexity of moral dilemmas. It equips us to differentiate between what is genuinely good and what merely appears so, ensuring that our actions are guided by wisdom rather than impulse or misinformation. Equally important is the recognition that moral responsibility is not a one-time event, but an ongoing process. Life presents us with a constant stream of choices, each an opportunity to affirm or abandon our values. Responsibility requires vigilance, a continual commitment to align our actions with our principles. This persistence is vital because the stakes of moral responsibility are not static. As circumstances change and new challenges arise, the nature of our responsibilities evolves, demanding adaptability and resilience. Moral responsibility also invites us to confront the uncomfortable truth that we are often both the problem and the solution. While it is easy to point fingers at external forces, society, institutions, or others, true responsibility requires us to acknowledge our complicity in the issues we face. Whether through direct action, passive acceptance, or willful ignorance, we contribute to the conditions of our world. This realization is humbling but also empowering, for it reminds us that we have the agency to effect change. Moral responsibility is not about perfection, but about striving. It recognizes that we are fallible beings, prone to error and weakness. Yet it also affirms that we are capable of growth and redemption. Responsibility calls us to rise above our limitations, to choose what is right even when it is difficult, and to leave the world better than we found it. It is a burden, yes, but also a profound privilege, the privilege of shaping our lives and our world with purpose, integrity, and love. The consequences of inaction are among the most pervasive and underestimated forces in human life. While it is easy to measure the impact of a deliberate choice, the effects of choosing not to act often go unnoticed until their consequences have become too large to ignore. This is because inaction does not announce itself, it works silently, allowing problems to fester and grow in the shadows. The results, though initially subtle, can manifest in profound and often irreversible ways, impacting individuals, communities, and entire societies. One of the most immediate and personal consequences of inaction is the erosion of self-confidence and integrity. When an individual recognizes a situation requiring action, be it addressing a harmful habit, speaking out against wrongdoing, or pursuing a meaningful goal but fails to act, they often experience guilt or regret. Over time, repeated instances of such avoidance can lead to a diminished sense of agency and self-respect. The person begins to doubt their ability to make meaningful decisions or effect change, creating a cycle of passivity and self-doubt that becomes increasingly difficult to break. Inaction also allows harmful influences to take root and thrive. A problem ignored is rarely a problem solved more often, it is a problem multiplied. Consider a workplace conflict that goes unaddressed. What begins as a minor misunderstanding can escalate into a toxic environment, affecting morale and productivity. Similarly, a small act of dishonesty tolerated in a relationship can erode trust over time, leading to deeper fractures that are much harder to repair. In these cases, the cost of inaction is not merely the continuation of the original issue, but its amplification into something far more damaging. On a larger scale, the consequences of inaction are even more striking. History provides countless examples of societies that suffered because they failed to act decisively in the face of emerging challenges. Environmental degradation is a prime example. For decades, scientists have warned of the dangers posed by pollution and climate change. Yet widespread inaction has allowed these issues to reach critical levels, threatening ecosystems and human communities worldwide. What might have been addressed with relative ease in the early stages now demands monumental effort and resources. Inaction in the face of injustice is particularly devastating. When individuals or societies fail to confront inequality, discrimination, or oppression, they effectively endorse the status quo. This silence enables harmful systems to persist and even gain strength. The voices of those who are marginalized go unheard, their struggles dismissed or ignored. Over time, this creates a culture of complicity where injustice becomes normalized, and those in power feel emboldened to continue their exploitative practices. The cost of such inaction is not only the suffering of the oppressed, but also the moral degradation of the society as a whole. Another insidious consequence of inaction is the loss of opportunities. Life is filled with fleeting moments where action can lead to growth, success, or meaningful change. When these moments are missed, they often cannot be reclaimed. For example, A student who neglects to seize an opportunity for mentorship might lose access to valuable guidance and networks that could have shaped their future. A community that fails to invest in education or infrastructure during times of economic prosperity may find itself ill-prepared to face future challenges. In each case, the cost of inaction is measured not only in what is lost, but in what might have been gained. Inaction also has a cumulative effect, creating a culture of complacency that is difficult to overcome. When people see problems going unaddressed, they may begin to adopt a mindset of resignation, believing that their efforts would be futile. This collective apathy can be self-reinforcing, as each instance of inaction lowers the expectations for engagement and accountability. Over time, this culture of inaction erodes the foundations of a healthy society, weakening its ability to respond to crises or innovate in the face of new challenges. Perhaps the most tragic consequence of inaction is its ability to rob us of meaning and purpose. Human beings are designed to strive, to create, and to confront the challenges of life with courage and determination. When we fail to act, we deny ourselves the opportunity to engage fully with the world around us. This disengagement can lead to a sense of emptiness or stagnation, as life becomes defined not by what we have done but by what we have avoided. The consequences of inaction often ripple outward, affecting others in ways we may not immediately recognize. A parent who fails to address their own shortcomings may pass those struggles on to their children. A leader who neglects to act decisively in a crisis can endanger not only their organization, but also the livelihoods of countless people who depend on them. In this way, the cost of inaction extends far beyond the individual, creating a legacy of missed opportunities and unresolved problems that future generations must bear. Inaction is not a neutral choice. It is a decision to let circumstances dictate outcomes, to allow problems to grow unchecked, and to forgo the responsibility of shaping a better future. Its consequences are rarely immediate, but they are always significant, revealing themselves over time in ways that demand far greater effort and sacrifice to address. The cost of inaction, then, is nothing less than the cost of failing to fulfill our potential as individuals, as communities, and as a species.